Democracy. Democracy is a system of government where power is vested in the people, who either rule directly or through elected representatives. In a democracy, citizens typically have the right to participate in decision-making processes, such as voting in elections, shaping policies, and holding leaders accountable. Key principles include majority rule, protection of minority rights, and the rule of law. Democracies vary in their forms, ranging from direct democracies, where citizens directly participate in decision-making, to representative democracies, where elected officials represent the interests of the people. Republic. A republic is a form of government where the country's head of state is elected, rather than being a hereditary monarch. In a republic, political power is derived from the people, who either directly elect representatives or participate in the decision-making process through democratic means. Republics may have different structures, such as presidential or parliamentary systems, but they all prioritize the principle of popular sovereignty and the rule of law. Republics often have constitutions that establish the framework for government and protect individual rights. Examples include the United States, France, and India. Capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system where individuals and businesses own and control the production and distribution of goods and services. In capitalism, the means of production are privately owned, and decisions about what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom are guided by market forces such as supply and demand. Competition among businesses drives innovation and efficiency. Capitalism also emphasizes the importance of private property rights and free markets. However, critics argue that capitalism can lead to inequality and exploitation if not properly regulated. Monarchy. In monarchy, a single individual, usually a king or queen, holds supreme authority and power. This authority is often inherited through familial lineage, although there are variations such as elective monarchies. In a monarchy, the monarch typically wields significant political influence, although the extent of their power can vary depending on the type of monarchy and the presence of other governing institutions such as parliaments or councils. Monarchies may be absolute, where the monarch's powers are unrestricted, or constitutional, where their powers are limited by a constitution or laws. Examples include the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, and Japan. Authoritarianism. In this form of government, power is concentrated in the hands of a single leader or a small group, often without much accountability to the people. This type of government restricts individual freedoms and often suppresses dissent. Examples include dictatorships and absolute monarchies. In authoritarian regimes, decisions are made from the top down, and citizens typically have limited political participation and civil liberties. Oligarchy. An oligarchy, where power is held by a small group of individuals or families, often based on wealth, social status, or political influence. In an oligarchy, this elite group typically controls key decision-making processes and may dominate political, economic, and social life. Oligarchies can exist within different types of political systems, such as democracies or dictatorships. They often lead to inequality and lack of representation for the broader population. Federalism. In federalism, power is divided between a central authority and constituent political units, such as states or provinces. In a federal system, both levels of government have their own areas of authority and autonomy, as defined by a constitution or law. This division of power allows for a balance between centralization and regional autonomy. Federalism promotes unity among diverse regions, while allowing for local governance tailored to specific needs. Dictatorship. A dictatorship, where power is concentrated in the hands of a single person or a small group, often without meaningful accountability to the people. In a dictatorship, the ruler, known as a dictator, exercises absolute authority and controls all aspects of governance. Dictatorships typically suppress dissent, limit individual freedoms, and may use force or coercion to maintain control. Unlike in democracies, where power is distributed and checked, in a dictatorship, decisions are made unilaterally by the ruling authority. Examples include North Korea under Kim Jong-un and Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe. Fascism. Fascism is a far-right political ideology characterized by authoritarianism, nationalism, and dictatorial power. In fascist regimes, a single leader, often with a charismatic personality, holds absolute control over the government and suppresses dissent through censorship, propaganda, and violence. Fascism glorifies the nation or race above the individual and seeks to establish a centralized, totalitarian state that enforces strict social and economic order. It often involves the scapegoating of minority groups and the suppression of political opposition. Historic examples include Italy under Benito Mussolini and Germany under Adolf Hitler. Theocracy. A theocracy, where religious leaders or religious institutions hold political authority. In a theocracy, laws and governance are based on religious principles, and religious figures often wield significant influence over political decision-making. Theocracy may involve a formal merging of religious and political institutions, with religious leaders holding official positions of power, or it may be more informal, with religious beliefs guiding governmental policies and practices. Theocratic governments can vary in their degree of religious influence, and may exist alongside other forms of governance. Examples include Iran, Vatican City, and historical examples like the Papal States. Communism. Communism is a socio-economic system where property and resources are owned and controlled collectively by the community or the state. In theory, communism aims for a classless society where wealth and resources are distributed equally among all members. Production and distribution are managed based on the principle of from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. However, in practice, communist governments have often been characterized by centralized control, lack of individual freedoms, and economic inefficiencies. Notable examples include the former Soviet Union and Maoist China. Autocracy. In an autocracy, one person or a small group holds all the power. This leader, often called an autocrat, has absolute authority and control over the government and society. Autocracies typically lack checks and balances, meaning there are few limits on the ruler's power. Examples of autocratic systems include dictatorships and absolute monarchies. In autocracies, individual freedoms and civil liberties are often limited, and political opposition may be suppressed. Colonialism. Colonialism is when one country establishes control over another region or territory, usually for economic gain or political dominance. This often involves settlers from the colonizing country establishing colonies in the new territory. Colonial powers typically exploit the resources and labor of the colonized region for their own benefit. Colonialism has had long-lasting effects on the cultures, economies, and political systems of both the colonizers and the colonized, and it is often associated with issues like exploitation, inequality, and cultural imperialism. Aristocracy. Aristocracy, where power is held by a privileged class, typically based on hereditary nobility. In aristocratic systems, political authority and influence are concentrated among a small group of wealthy and influential families. Aristocracies often prioritize the interests of the nobility and may limit political participation to the elite class. Historically, aristocracies were prevalent in feudal societies, where land ownership determined social and political status. Today, aristocracy is less common as most societies have transitioned to more egalitarian forms of government. Confederation. In this form, several independent states or entities come together to form a union, but each retains its sovereignty and autonomy. In a confederation, the central authority is typically limited to specific areas of common interest, such as defense or foreign affairs. Member states have significant control over their own internal affairs. The United States, under the Articles of Confederation, and the modern-day Swiss Confederation are examples of confederations. Republicanism. Republicanism is a political ideology that advocates for a system of government based on the principles of a republic. It emphasizes the importance of popular sovereignty, where political power is derived from the consent of the governed. Republicanism promotes representative democracy, where citizens elect leaders to represent their interests and make decisions on their behalf. It also prioritizes the rule of law, individual rights, and civic virtue. Republicanism stands in contrast to monarchies and autocracies, favoring government structures that distribute power among elected officials and institutions accountable to the people. Commonwealth. A commonwealth is a political association of sovereign states, typically former colonies or territories of a larger empire. These states voluntarily cooperate with each other based on shared values, history, and mutual interests. The Commonwealth often promotes democracy, human rights, and economic development among its member states. While the British Commonwealth, now known as the Commonwealth of Nations, is the most well-known example, there are other regional commonwealths around the world, such as the Commonwealth of Independent States in Eurasia. Anarchy. Anarchy is a state of society where there is no central authority or government. In anarchy, there are no rulers, laws, or institutions to enforce order. Instead, individuals and communities rely on voluntary cooperation and mutual agreements to organize themselves. Anarchist principles often emphasize individual freedom and autonomy. However, anarchy can also lead to chaos and disorder if not managed properly.